Hey, welcome to the CMO Whisper Show. I'm your host, Steve Olensky. Part marketing practitioner, part ad agency veteran, part journalist. I was a writer for Forbes for 10 years. I've had so many insightful conversations over the years with business leaders, to athletes, to celebrities, to, of course, CMOs. The only difference now is instead of sharing those insights through written form, I'm doing it this way. My guest this week is Chris Murphy, Senior Vice President of Brand Marketing at Adidas North America. For over 20 years, Chris has been shaping the voice of one of the world's most iconic sports brands, from building Adidas' first global newsroom and forging early partnerships with Facebook and Twitter, to leading the U.S. loyalty program from 12 to nearly 50 million members. Chris has been at the forefront of digital transformation in sport. Since stepping into his current role in 2022, he's relaunched Impossible is Nothing, produced the award-winning series Running While Black, launched the first NCAA student-athlete affiliate network, and brought the You Got This campaign to life with a high-profile debut on the Las Vegas Sphere during Super Bowl weekend. A lifelong believer that sport has the power to change lives, Chris focuses on creating marketing that feels personal while scaling globally, whether working with icons like Messi and Mahomes or amplifying grassroots stories. Chris Murphy, my friend, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Thanks, Steve.
You are very welcome. And I'm ready and amped to go. I'm a lifelong sports fan myself, and I won't ask you to predict the Super Bowl just yet, maybe at some point. And as I hold up my Eagles mug that only you can see. Yeah.
Of course.
Okay. It was pure coincidence that I had this mug today, of course.
Lovely.
I want to start with creating a culture of curiosity, right? How do you design, or intentionally, I should say, design spaces where every voice, regardless of role or background, has that feeling of empowerment to contribate ideas?
Yeah, it's a fun conversation, actually. And, I think back, I've been here for 20 years and have had some really great mentors, some great leaders, great partners, great colleagues, folks who have helped me and taught me along the way. And I'll never forget one of my former bosses who told the whole group, this is probably 18 years ago, told the whole group, he said, "Hey, I have got a lot of great ideas, a lot, but it's not my job to come up with the ideas. It's my job to create an environment that is right for all of you to create those ideas. So we're going to change some things around here and make the environment better for creating more space, time, energy, effort, whatever you might say, to make it more hospitable to ideas coming from the group." And I always took that away and said, that's an awesome way to lead, right? Because I think I've got lots of ideas and I can dive straight into tactics. But I think if you can create a culture where the great ideas bubble up from your team, and that team is constantly coming up with those ideas, and you've created the right environment or the right spaces for that, I think you're going to be more successful. And so when we talk about culture of curiosity, it's about creating spaces where people have the mind space, the time, the environment, the setup, all the things that allow them to be curious and then formulate and come up with great ideas that I can then, as a leader, promote, make sure they get seen, make sure they get resourced against.
And it goes without saying, but we're going to say it. There's words and then there's actions.
Sure.
Right. And as the leader, you have to do both.
Agreed.
Right?
Agreed. I think if you were to ask my team, people on my team, and I will say this, I feel very lucky that, and obviously you've met Jared, who leads our newsroom. I've been lucky that since I've been in this role, I've had my same front line. So my heads, my VPs and senior directors have all been the same for a while. And if you ask them, do we create an environment or a culture that is a culture of curiosity or a culture where great ideas can be born and then get promoted, or do I do a good job of funding them, or do I do a good job of promoting them to my boss, our president, or to my global counterpart who's the head of global marketing? I think they tell you yes. And so I think that, if you create a culture where good ideas get support and energy and effort, and then those ideas actually go live and they create interest from a consumer, and that consumer then does something as a result, I think you've done something from just talking about creating that culture to actually promoting it, supporting it, having the consumer see it, and then rewarding the team who comes up with those ideas.
And there has to be this sense of safety, right? In that I can share my idea, no matter how ridiculous I may think it is, that I won't be laughed at, judged, whatever.
Totally. So I think one of my favorite things is when people come to me and say, I've got a great idea. And I always come back and say, that's cool. Let's make sure it's tied to the objectives you have set for either this campaign or product launch. I mean, I think you know this and you talk to a lot of people. We have a lot of bright, shiny, fun things in the world of marketing, especially right now. And it's really easy to get tactical and be like, oh, I've got this great idea. This cool thing's happening in AI. This awesome tool is going to allow us to do X, Y, and Z. It's like, well, cool. Is it tied to the objectives you have set for the campaign? If it is, let's get after it. Great. If you think it's going to help you, generate more engagement, if it's going to help you get after the sales for this particular product, or if it's going to help you promote this athlete in a new way, let's absolutely do it.
So let's talk about balancing. So how do you balance curiosity with focus so innovation doesn't drift into distraction?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I was not, earlier in my career, I think I was really terrible at processes, just process in general. I was like, process can get in the way of me wanting to be, I want to move fast. I want to be agile. I want to get after the consumer. I want to do really cool stuff. And I felt like process got in the way of that, to the point that I think at one point, when I was leading digital, I think I hired an outside partner to help build processes for the team, because I was like, this is just not my thing. And I think over time learned very quickly that as my teams grew and as the number of people who report into me grew, that if you don't have process and you don't have operational excellence, that the opportunity and ability to be innovative, to have curiosity, to take time to ask questions and to think, that goes away because you're spending too much time. Like, when's my milestone? What template am I using? Is I have to do a PowerPoint again? Do I have to use, is it what, I need a new computer. It's all those things that if you have a large team, if you don't create some operational foundations and excellence, the other stuff is really, really hard to do because you just don't have time. You're too busy doing all the minutia and other stuff that just doesn't allow you to think about really cool, fun, interesting ideas. So I think over the years, I focused a lot more on operational excellence. It's a huge part of what my teams have to do. What that allows them to do is not worry about when things are due. I don't have to worry about, do you have to create your own template? No, there's a template for everything. There's a lot of stuff that allows them, I don't have to worry about this over here. I can worry about writing great briefs, working with great agencies, coming up with great ideas, getting stuff seen and promoted, talking to great publishing partners. I can spend my time on the stuff that matters most and not worry about all the operational elements. So that's, to your point, you have to have that great balance. And if you don't, I think you get really stuck in, honestly, just not having enough time to come up with great ideas.
Which is the ultimate crime, right? If that's the case. And that balance, that line, to me, is constantly shifting. As a leader, you got to follow that line.
You have to. And it's honestly, it's hard sometimes. I mean, you think about the industry that Adidas is in, right? We follow a go-to-market calendar with product, right? Really important that we hit these milestones and follow these things. So we have a lot of milestones that we have to hit throughout the course of a season or a half year or a year. And that's important, right? And you have to hit those. Some people allow those things to get in their way of their creativity. They go, oh man, I can't be creative. I can't come up with good ideas if you're going to keep me inside of this box. I'm like, hey, look, the box exists for better or for worse. You can make that box as big or as small as you want. It can be suffocating or it can be somewhat freeing, because all of those things, timelines, templates, et cetera, are provided for you, meaning you don't have to spend your time on it. So all you got to do is spend your time thinking about, how do I come up with great objectives, great briefs, great insights, great data, and the great ideas that flow from that, and then help you promote that.
Is there one example or two that you can point to where this culture of curiosity and openness led to something really kind of innovative?
Oh gosh, I feel like there's quite a bit. I mean, I think you mentioned the Sphere thing for the launch of You Got This a couple of years ago when we came out with it. That is, when the Sphere started to come up and come out, people were looking at it. And I'm sure anyone listening to this podcast was calling them like I was, like, do you have a sales team yet? Like, we're ready. Let's start buying some ads. I'm tired of the big. I love there's a big yellow smiley thing I keep seeing on the golf course all the time. When do we get to start running ads on this bad boy? So yeah, I think that during that time period, there was a lot of conversation happening. What I do love is that my team saw that very quickly, reached out to the Sphere right away and started having really early dialogue about that, and came back and said, hey, we have an idea for how we want to launch the campaign, which was supposed to be a TV and digital campaign, getting a 30 and 60 spot seen as much as possible, and said, hey, we want to take a risk, because the development, if you imagine, the development time period for the Sphere is 10 to 12 weeks. At that time it's shortened now, but the time was 10 to 12 weeks. We're launching You Got This spot with Patrick Mahomes. Super Bowl is in Las Vegas. You don't know that Mahomes and the Chiefs are going to be in the Super Bowl 10 to 12 weeks out. It's a massive risk to put him on the Sphere during Super Bowl week if he's not in the Super Bowl. And so we made the decision and made the risk and said, we're going to go for it. Whether he's in there or not, he transcends just being part of a particular team in the NFL. He is the face of the NFL. He's big enough to overcome the fact he's not actually in the Super Bowl. And the team said, hey, we want to do this. We want to create something new and different. We want to launch this campaign, not by running a multi-million-dollar ad during the Super Bowl. Instead, we want to launch on the Sphere during that week at the Super Bowl. And I was like, that's a great idea. It's a great idea. Great way to come out and launch it. And so I think that's a really good idea where there is this fun, shiny object, but it tied back to a key objective that we're trying to do. And the team was willing to push on me to take a risk around showcasing an athlete and a partner that may or may not be in that sport moment that everyone's paying attention to.
That was, pun intended, rolling the dice.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. And luckily, I mean, I'm a huge Patrick Mahomes fan. I'm a giant homer. I kind of have to be. I've been a part of his Adidas life since the get-go. But he had been there before, and we believed he was going to get there again. And I think when you ask if I was going to give you an idea he was going to make it to the Super Bowl this year, I would go with the Chiefs again.
Yeah. Well, we'll save that to the end. We'll get your your insight.
Nice.
So you just mentioned a few minutes ago operational excellence. And clearly that's very high on your list of priorities, right?
Yep.
Can you share for my audience who are leaders just like you, some structures or processes that you find essential to keep your teams grounded? But here's that line again of balancing and allowing creativity to flourish.
Yeah, and allowing agility, right? I mean,
exactly. And adaptability. Right.
In marketing, you likely, like me, you have a consumer who is very fickle and changes all the dang time and is onto some new platform or new publishing environment or following something or a different trend pretty quickly. So if you're really, really ahead from a planning perspective, that's great. And I think, we have teams who spend a lot of time just on calendars, right? And getting ahead of what does our calendar for this particular season look like? Where are we putting our dollars, energy, effort, et cetera? And we do that as early as possible. And then when you're early and you're able to do that, that allows for teams to get in front of things. So I always tell people, like, we have to be early for a lot of reasons. One, we are in a very competitive space, right? I'm competing. I'm an upfront media. Times come around, it's super competitive. Like, you got to be on top of it to make sure you're getting the best placement from a media perspective. But if you're not ahead of it, if you're not planning for where you think the right product's going to hit, the right athlete you want to utilize at the right moment, you're going to miss those opportunities. Then you come back in a scatter market or after upfronts and you're buying crap media at an increase, right? At a higher valuation, which isn't great. So I think we talk about building out our calendars and our plans really, really early, even if it's as best as we possibly can, so that we can be a little more aggressive when it comes to things like media buying or forming partnerships with key publishing partners. We have some great partners in our earned media space. We have some great partners in the bought media space. The earlier we lock in time periods and moments and things like that, the better rates we get, the better placement we get, all those things. So we do a lot of planning when it comes to calendarization really, really early. Now we allow for agility, right? I don't put all my money into that. We put a good chunk of it, put a fixed budget in early, and then we sit back and we wait and see what happens. And that allows what we have, which is called flexible spending, which allows us to be more agile and aggressive as we learn, as we get closer to the point of launch or a key sport moment. That
cannot be, there's not a mountaintop high enough for me to scream that about. Develop your plan, but you got to have that flexibility, man. And if the pandemic told us anything, that's among it.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually, that's so funny to think about how much changed during the pandemic and how flexible we had to be. We switched from, everyone here knows this because we all did it, who's listening, but most of us were probably going like, hey, if you think about 15, 16, 17, 18, we were getting after large scale upper funnel media investments. And then COVID hit and it was like, how much can I fit into the lower funnel of my media plan? Mm-hmm. And what is my new floor when it comes to ROAS, right? Because we were diving down fast because we had a ton of inventory. Yep. We had very few channels that were open, and I had to drive as many sales as I possibly could. All that upper funnel media work kind of went away for a while, and we just dove to the bottom. And I think the ability to switch that very, very quickly with our media agency partner, who was built for upper and mid funnel work, not a lot of lower funnel work. The conversations and partnerships we were having with our friends at Google, the conversations we were having with Meta and Twitter at the time, changed really, really fast. And the companies who were able to adjust their budgets and their conversations with this company quickly were the most successful. Now, think about 2 years ago, everyone's doing the opposite. Oh, we got to get back to upper and mid funnel spending. Brand still matters. You got to pull that money back up. So you then have to go back and convince all the people who for the past 3 years have become rather addicted to that lower funnel media drug that it's like, hey, we still need to do this other stuff. This creates new consumers and even better data to pull off of on the lower funnel. Like, you've got to switch it back. And that wasn't easy either because you got used to this great ROAS, lower funnel. I can see, last click attribution.
Yep.
Boom, done. And I think the companies are able to ride that wave quickly, dive into the bottom, get after that lower funnel, and then come out of COVID and be like, all right, we got to go back to where we were before. I think those have been the ones that have been most successful. And I think we've been really lucky to have I have a great global counterpart who runs marketing globally, who also is on that same wave with us. Have a great finance partner who understands the importance and value of upper funnel brand marketing, and a great leader in our president here who also understands the importance and value of upper funnel media and marketing. So we've been lucky that we've been able to do that. But to your point, if you weren't agile during that, if you couldn't convince folks otherwise, you either got stuck up here when everything was, you're trying to sell inventory, or you're still right now probably spending too much money on lower funnel media.
Mm-hmm. So you just alluded to something that I think is very, very important. And that's relationships. You mentioned your counterpart and your president. And it's a really good dovetail into what I want to ask next about how do you avoid bureaucracy, right? In when you're striving for that operational excellence and discipline, and not putting words in your mouth, but to me at the forefront has to be relationships.
Yeah. And I don't mean to, I don't know if you bleep out swearing or not, but I think I tell my team all the time, like, just don't be an asshole.
You can say whatever you want on my show.
I think sometimes in our industry is super, super competitive. It's hyper competitive. And I love that because I'm a super competitive person. And so I appreciate that. But you don't have to, just because you're competitive doesn't mean you have to be an asshole. And so I think sometimes in our industry, we have partners and people and otherwise who aren't nice to agencies, who aren't nice to publishing partners, who aren't nice to media partners. Here's my money, get it done because I said so. And I think if you can, again, I think to the conversation about earlier, if you're early with your plans and you're open with those plans with a lot of your partners, they want to make time and effort, energy for you because you're giving them an idea of what's coming really, really early. And they're building their editorial calendars themselves. They're building their marketing calendars themselves. They're building their yearly plans themselves. If you can be open, nice, honest, give them some insight early, you're going to be better. If you do it in a nice way as well,
right,
where you're not a jerk about it, they're likely to give you better placement anyway. So I do think when it comes to those relationships, I think, again, being really early and being buttoned up, operational excellence helps. They love it when you're on time, on budget, and you're nice about it. You're likely going to get a lot more out of your partners than you would otherwise.
I'm laughing because you and I both know it's so, I'll say it, fucking simple.
Yeah.
We both know, and I can say it because I talk to brand CMOs all the time. You're the exception. I promise you that.
I think, again, I appreciate you giving me credit for that stuff. And I think it's taken a long time being here to figure that out. And again, having some really good bosses, some really good mentors who, and marketers, we want to noodle with stuff. I want to mess with stuff all the time. It's in our nature. We're creative people. We want to fuck with stuff, but consistency and frequency. We hear it all the time. That's what works in marketing. And I want to play with it so badly. If you can avoid that, right? Be consistent, be frequent, create some operational excellence underneath that, you're going to be successful. Be successful. But it's really hard to do because you want to mess with stuff. I want to mess with stuff. And it's hard for me to pull back and be like, hold on, we have objectives. We have a plan. We know what we're trying to do. We got to stick to the plan. Again, allowing for some agility within that. But I think you're right. It's hard to do because by our very nature, marketers want to mess with stuff.
Without question. I mean, we overcomplicate everything.
Totally. Yeah. And we love it. It's great.
It's got to be a medical term for this. I'll research that. I'll get back to you. Or we'll coin something together. You and I will coin a term.
Sure.
Because clearly it's rampant and it's been around forever. All right. I want to go back to something we talked a little bit earlier. We just kind of skirted a little bit about connecting the dots between, hey, this amazing idea, right, to the business case, right? How do you ensure, again, as if you're talking to a room full of marketers, because that's what my listeners are, when someone on your team comes to you with this really, and their passion is flowing, right? And then you kind of have to not put the brakes on, but go, love it, but.
Yeah, that's a tough one, honestly. I mean, you mentioned a word that's so important. I think you mentioned the word passion, and I love passionate people. We are in the business of making people believe, and I mean that in a couple of different ways. I have to make and work to help make my boss, my CFO, my global marketing counterpart believe. They have to believe in the plan that I have to help us win in North America against our competition with the consumer that we care about. My team has to make our consumer believe that we are the brand that they love and the products we make are the ones they want to buy. So we're in a business of belief to a certain extent. You can't do that if you're not passionate. You got to be passionate about this stuff. You got to be passionate about marketing, about athletes, about sport, about culture, about music, or just generally, you're a passionate person. Maybe you're passionate about hiking. It doesn't matter, but I usually try and find a way. And it's you try and ask questions in interviews of people. You try and get an idea of what are you passionate about? Because if you're passionate in this job, you're going to be more successful because you're in the business of making people believe, both internally as well as externally from a consumer standpoint. I think then to your point, you take that beyond that and you say, okay, how do I put in place the building blocks for that so that when someone comes in this office and says with a lot of passion, this is a great idea, I simply go back and say, hey, does this or does this not match back to the objectives you set? I think you make a great point before too. We live and work in a very subjective space, right? Feedback is, I don't like that blue. I don't know if I like the color that model is wearing. I don't know if I like the hair. I mean, we get into that really world of subjectivity. The more objective you can be in this business, the more successful you're going to be. So I don't want to kill your passion. I don't want to take it away. But if it's not tied back to the objectives that you have set, then we're not going to do it. And that makes it very, very simple. And then you obviously have to we do a lot of work here around how to properly write and set objectives, because it's like 101 stuff, but objective strategy tactics. Yeah. I know it's silly, but if you don't spend time on that and coach your teams on how to write effective briefs, how to set objectives effectively and do a good job of it, doesn't work. So we talk about objectives all the time. I know that, I know you talk to some folks on my team setting this thing up.
Yep.
Laugh at how often when we go through meetings, I spend on what are the objectives for this particular campaign? What are the objectives for this launch? We talk about it a lot. Because if you don't set those objectives correctly at the very beginning and the briefs you write, the tactics that come back in, you can't measure them effectively. If we're in a subjective world, the way to combat that is to set great objectives.
When I was first starting out a billion years ago in marketing, and I'll never forget it, one of the lessons I've always held close was, I think we're saying the same thing, but you're saying objective. It was, what's the end result? What do you want? And work back from that.
Yes. And if what you're doing doesn't ladder back to that, throw it away. Don't worry about it. If you're passionate about it, it's easy for me to say no. And you should be too. You should have no problem pushing it aside, because if it's not getting after your end goal or the objectives you set for this particular campaign or launch or whatever, don't do it.
Exactly. How do you determine, this is a very open-ended question, and you may mean this word by objectives, but KPIs.
Sure.
Again, you're talking to a room full of marketers. Hey, how do I help my team define KPIs?
Yeah, I think we're also lucky here that we have some great data people as well. So having my background being digital, a lot of the stuff that I used to do was almost entirely rooted on what's the ROAS, what's the return on this? Am I getting the right? Is the traffic right? Is my average order value correct? All those things, you're going after when it comes to driving sales and driving business. When it comes from the digital side, when you move then onto the brand side, that doesn't go away. You still have to have some of those key KPIs you're trying to engage with. So I'm sure a lot of folks listening, you have MMM data to say, hey, is this ad working and driving sales overall, both short and long term? You're probably looking at share of voice. Is what I'm doing creating larger share of voice than my competition in places like social media and search? There's a lot of things that we look at from a brand standpoint that I'm sure a lot of people on here look at as well. And we look at those. We look at the data. We look at the insights all the time to make sure that are the things that we are doing laddering up to these 3 or 4 KPIs that I care about most from a brand perspective. That's also inclusive of sales, right? We're not doing our job if we're a for-profit company. We're not doing our job if we're not also driving sales. So we certainly have that objective setting, and then you have to have KPIs tied to that. Now, those KPIs for me across my team are typically the same, because if I've got 4 categories, 5 categories, the brand, an events team, I've got a newsroom team. If we're all marching to different KPIs and objectives, it doesn't work really well. So our objectives tend to be comparable across the board, and our KPIs tend to be comparable as well.
I want to go back to passion, because it's a very important word in my life. And one of my mantras in life is you cannot fake passion. You can't, no matter what it's for. I don't think you can fake it. You can try, but you can't fake it. I want to get your perspective from the hiring process when you're interviewing somebody. I already know clearly you're looking for someone to be passionate about something.
Yep.
Not even necessarily sports, right? But sitting across from you in an interview, you got to see something versus the robotic standard answer.
Yep. Yes, for sure. And honestly, you're going to laugh. This sounds so stupid, but you just ask someone what they're passionate about, and then you ask more questions about the thing they answer, and you'll find out really quickly if someone's passionate about it. Because there's things I love talking about, and there's things I hate talking about, right? Everyone has that, especially as you get older. I think, and as I'm getting older, you find out pretty quickly the things you like to talk about and the things you don't like to talk about. And when someone engages me and asks me a question about something I'm passionate about, I'll talk for hours about it. You want to talk about University of Washington and the Huskies? I'll talk to you all day about UW and the Huskies. If you want to talk about brand marketing, all day.
Right.
So I think when you ask someone the question, what are you passionate about? And I usually say, look, it can be anything. It can be marketing. It can be sport. You can give me the answers you're going to want to give because you're in an interview for a sport company on the brand marketing side. But if you say fishing, I'm going to ask, where's the last place you went fishing? What did you catch? What lure did you use? Oh, you like to fly fish. That's great. Where'd you learn? Who taught you how to fly fish? And you can get someone going pretty fast on an area they're passionate about with a few additional questions. And you find out really quickly if someone is and does bring that passion. Now, if someone answers brand marketing, I'm so passionate about brand marketing. It's like, great. Okay. Tell me what it is you're passionate about brand marketing. What area of brand marketing are you most interested in? Do you like, I love media. What about media do you like? Now, I think that I've worked in so many different areas of brand marketing over the years. I can usually dive relatively deep with someone on these topics. And I like a lot of them. So I can dive pretty good. So you can get pretty quick into some areas with someone if they have passion overall or not. And so that's interviews that I do. I usually ask that question really early and then dive a little bit deeper to see if someone brings the passion to the interview.
I love that you bring it up early because to me, and I do the same thing when I'm interviewing somebody for a job, is it kind of sets the tone.
Yes.
Right. For everything else you're going to talk about. Because if it comes across as insincere, you can pretty much see where the rest of the conversation's going. Yeah.
I don't usually bring a low amount of energy to most things. So I usually come in with a decent amount of energy with stuff. So I'm also looking for people to match my energy. So, coming in and asking questions and I talk pretty fast and I get going quickly. I'm looking for someone who can keep up usually.
That's why we get along so well. I am always over caffeinated. I don't know if you're a coffee drinker, but that's my fuel.
Yeah. I don't drink caffeine for the very reason that I don't really need it. And people like, man, don't give that guy caffeine. That's the last thing that dude needs.
So noted. All right. We're coming up against it. And I want to end as I do every episode, what I call it a random 5, Chris. I ask each guest 5 random personal questions, get to know you as a person, right? Just they're fun. And if you're game, here we go.
Love it. Yep. Let's go for it.
Number 1, what's a passion or hobby outside of work that keeps you grounded?
It's a newer one for me. Both my kids play softball. They play club softball. And I've been helping coach my oldest daughter's team and I love it. And I hadn't coached before and I really enjoy the coaching aspect. I'm not sure my oldest daughter loves it as much as I do, but I love it. I love it a lot.
All right. So wait a minute. As a former coach of his son in basketball, my son wasn't crazy about me coaching him either because, we're parents. We know nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel lucky. I've had, I've now, this is my 3rd season with my 2nd head coach. And I've learned, the nice thing is now I think I've learned enough from the previous 2 head coaches that actually know what they're doing, that I better. Now, the fun part about me being in these teams is, as I just mentioned, I'm the energy person. I'm the person who brings all the fun and energy. I've got the music going. I get the girls hyped up, get ready for games. I love that part of it. And now that I'm adding some of the coaching elements into it, because I'm learning, watching a lot of videos, watching a lot of stuff about how to be a better coach, I'm getting better. So I think early on, she was not as excited about me being there. I think she's much better about it now because I think she understands I know a little bit more about what I'm talking about. And it's not just keep your eye on the ball, swing hard, which was my previous few coaching phrases that I had.
Next question. Who's someone you look up to and why?
Oh gosh, that's such a good question. I will say this, and this is a weird one because it's what's the right word? Posthumously, it's my dad. So my dad passed away almost 16 years ago, and he worked for Eddie Bauer for ages. He retired from Eddie Bauer. He was Eddie Bauer for a long, long time, and he was in the product development world. And for a while, when I was doing the .com stuff in the outdoor space, we actually our careers overlapped a little bit, which was funny. I actually called my dad once to try and get Eddie Bauer to sponsor the Gorge Games when I was working in Hood River for the Gorge Games as the marketing person, which is funny. And then we both ended up at Outdoor Retailer a couple times in Utah at the same time with different companies, which was super fun. So I always wanted to have a job or be in a similar world as my dad. But I think what's interesting is, and I'm sure some people listening have gone through this, he had a year when he knew he was going to pass away and I knew he was going to pass away. So he spent a year basically knowledge sharing, right? And talking about, hey, if you want to do X, Y, and Z, this, he talked a lot about not having regrets when you pass away and how important that is and life decisions he would have done differently had he known he was going to pass away before retirement. So when you talk about someone you look up to, I look up to someone who's given me a tremendous amount of knowledge. It's made my decision-making process easier, right? And I can apply it to Adidas as one example. My dad moved around a little bit for work because his thing to me when I was growing up was, work comes first, right? You got to get after your job, work hard, work comes first. When he was passing away, he was like, nope, family first all the time, right? If you have a company you like and you like the job you're in, stick with it, right? And give them everything that you've got, right? Put all your energy and effort into that. And I love where I work. Honestly, I love working here more than anything. I think people who know that, know me, know I love working here. So I put all my energy and effort into this and my family. And that was a big learning from him. And because of that, it's someone I look up to for sure, even though he's been gone for a while.
That's beautiful. Clearly, I'm going to barely a day goes by if that you don't think about him.
all the time.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
the time.
And I could see you also, what would my dad do in this situation?
Exactly. And that's, I think, if you talk about somebody you look up to, you ask that question about the person you look up to the most. That's why that's probably the right and the best answer for me.
It's a good segue into, and I'm going to guess he's the answer for this one, of what's the best piece of advice you've ever received? And I think you kind of just touched on it, but
I did. I do appreciate, and I reference this a lot too, that advice I before from our 18 years ago from the person who was leading marketing at the time was, I've got lots of great ideas. That's not my job. My job is to create a team and an environment so that all of you have great ideas. And I've taken that away forever, which is great, because if I wake up in the morning, I'm like, oh, got so many great ideas today. Let's get going. What's the point of having a team, right? So I think that I like that as an answer for that one, just because I do use that piece of advice all the time. So
the next one, these, by the way, I pull these very randomly. So it's kind of similar, but it's not, because you're talking about advice. But is there a quote or mantra like that you go by?
Oh, gosh. I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't know if there's one single thing that I would say that I live by. My team will let you know this, but like having gone through that with my father, right? Having him gone through a thing with health, which was a big deal for him, which is that is passing away. I tell my team all the time, like, health and family come first. Right. If you've got things you have to deal with health and family, that always comes first. And I truly believe in that one as well. I love working hard. I think all my team appreciates that about me, is that, a lot of things you might be smarter than me. You might be more talented than me. You might know more than me, but you're rarely going to work harder than I'm going to work.
Yep.
But my family and my health are a big component of that. So these guys know. The reason I was a little bit late today is because I went for a run. So my health and getting runs in every day is really important, both my mental health and my physical health. So those things come first, and I will sometimes push some important things aside to make sure I get in my daily runs.
Well, now that we've talked this past slow 35, 40 minutes, I can tell you're a golden rule guy, right? Do unto others, right?
For the most part, yeah.
Do unto others, right? As I want to be treated. Okay, last question, and it's a perfect one to end this. Growing up, favorite athlete?
Well, okay, I'm a Seattle person, so I grew up in Seattle. And so my favorite athlete growing up, and people who live in Seattle will know this, but I was a quarterback growing up in Seattle. And at that point in time, the Seahawks were not particularly great, but the Huskies were great in the late 80s and early 90s. They won a national championship in 1991. So I grew up idolizing Mark Brunell. Mark Brunell was my quarterback, number 11. I was number 11 because he was number 11. So my favorite athlete growing up was Mark Brunell, which I know is like, everyone's like, who's Mark Brunell? Why? But he was my favorite.
There's no wrong answer.
I know. That's the honest truth, though, is I love Mark Brunell. He was my favorite.
Again, there's no wrong answer. Well, listen, my friend, it is so great to meet. I would love to do a part 2 at some point, because I just had a great time. The time flew by. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, Steve, thanks. Great to see you again. I really appreciate it.
Well, that wraps up another episode of the CMO Whisperer Show. I hope you shared this episode with your friends. And if you have not already, please subscribe to be kept up to date on all the latest episodes. And if you're so inclined, leave me a review on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you.